All right, everyone, let's get the show started. Welcome to our DevOps office hours. It's the first one of January here in 2022. My name is Eric Osterman, and I'll be leading the conversation. I'm the founder and CEO of Cloud Posse. We're a DevOps accelerator, and that means that we help companies own their infrastructure in record time by building together with your team and showing them the ropes. So if that sounds interesting, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. Again, that's cloudposse.com/quiz to get started. For those of you new to the call, the format's very informal. My goal is to get your questions answered. So feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you want to jump in and participate. We host these calls every week. Our call today is recorded. We'll automatically post a video recording of this session to our YouTube channel. So if you enjoy the content and want to support it, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. Just head over to youtube.com/cloudposse. Again, that's youtube.com/cloudposse. Also, don't forget to share these with your team so we can spread the gospel of how to do things the right way. If that said, let's jump over to announcements. The biggest announcement that I've seen in the past week was this first one here. I was really excited about this. This is for those of you using Kubernetes on AWS. One of the challenges for a long time has been, how do you achieve end-to-end TLS? We're talking from client all the way down to the pod. And one of the challenges with that is, how do you get TLS certificates at the service level for your pods in a programmatic fashion? For anyone using Kubernetes in general, you're probably using Cert-manager. Cert-manager has been instrumental in automating TLS with multiple backends, any backend that supports, for example, the ACME protocol. So we're talking Let's Encrypt and Zero SSL as a paid service that supports it as well. But that's a very different model, and that's using TLS certificates that exist, that are created, first of all, by a third-party service, that are stored as secrets and could therefore be exfiltrated from your Kubernetes cluster. Thus, it would be really nice to use Amazon Certificate Manager to have certificates signed by a CA. Now, that's what this announcement is enabling. It's specifically for Amazon's private CA, so not for public certificates. That feature request is still pending. They don't support Cert-manager using public certificates yet with Cert-manager, but this is working with private. And why that's cool is the way Cert-manager works is that you add an annotation to a service or to an ingress, and it'll automatically create, do the mechanics on the back end to obtain a certificate and associated with a service. So what this is doing is that, but for your services and for private services from a private CA. So with this announcement, it should be, haven't validated, should be possible to do end-to-end TLS to Kubernetes services without using something like AppMesh or Istio or Ingress, Nginx, and Nitro enclaves. Anybody now this was just the announcement that this is now production ready. It's been obviously in the works for some time, and it's available on GitHub here. Has anybody already been working with this or looking into it or following it more closely? Anyone have any other use cases for this other than the end-to-end TLS or internal TLS? All right. The next announcement is one from Cloud Posse here. It's really ironic. This is one of our most popular modules. We don't really do anything with Beanstalk. We've been using EKS and ECS for the past 5 years or so, but Beanstalk lives on. And while it's uncool, it's battle tested, you could say, for those simple use cases. Well, we did a maintenance release here over the break. Andre closed out or knocked out a whole ton of open issues that had been standing for that had been open or outstanding for some time. So if you are using Beanstalk, check it out. Another interesting announcement, it was posted in our Terraform Slack channel. If you guys haven't joined our Slack community yet, you can always register by going to slack.cloudposse.com, and you'll get a form where you can register to join our community. So in this announcement, it's that there's now a way you can do migrations, database migrations natively in Terraform. And on the one side, it doesn't make me that excited because most companies are probably using some ORM with a built-in framework. If you're using Rails or Python, they'll have something for you already. But this is for companies that need some way to manage other schemas, possibly schemas shared across multiple services. And if you're already using the Terraform tooling and have continuous delivery for Terraform, hey, not a bad choice for managing your schema and migrations as well. Has anybody already kicked the tires on this or used this? All right.
I'm about to do that.
Oh, hey, Oliver.
Hey, yeah. So I'll see how that goes. I'm just going to be starting that next few days. See what happens.
Yeah, I think it sounds interesting. So we have our own design decision process, and one of those things is advising customers on how they should handle their database migration. So I think we'll probably add this as one of the considered options for customers that don't have any other way of running migrations right now.
But how do you run that in the VPC? Like if it's inside of it, you still need a connection to your VPC.
Oh, but that's not a problem at all because you're running continuous delivery, right? You're running Spacelift or Terraform Cloud. You're not running Terraform on the command line. None of those problems exist. So, no. So in our standard implementation is we have a automation account and a transit gateway that connects all the accounts to the automation account. In the automation account, we have a VPC, and in the VPC, we deploy our GitHub Action runners, and we deploy our Spacelift workers. If you're running Terraform Cloud, we would deploy that in there. And that's what gives us connectivity to all the other services and databases therein, and that works really well.
Yeah, I saw this and I have to say it kind of made me cringe. Like I think something like Flyway or one of the very specific like database migration tools is a much better solution for really doing production migrations for SQL, like especially, I don't know, this seems really clunky and it doesn't support like a lot of different things that I think that a more robust tool actually does.
Yeah. The reason I'm intrigued by it is because it's really for the initial schema setup, where you provision an RDS instance or a Redshift cluster, and you just want an initial schema in there, and then that initial setup will evolve over time, and you can capture that with migrations. Yeah, so that's how that came up, basically.
Or capture user creation in the SQL database.
Yeah, exactly. All that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Oliver, any other interesting things you've come across?
No, that's the main one. Past couple of weeks.
Cool. Also, I wanted to highlight our jobs channel. We've had a lot of interesting jobs posted with some interest lately in our Slack community. So if you head over to the jobs channel, if you are hiring, feel free to post job postings in this channel, or if you're looking for your next gig, do check it out, as there's a lot of companies posting here interesting opportunities. What I like about this is kind of birds of a feather flock together. So these are companies that kind of understand what we're going for with sweetops and our open source ecosystem. So if that sounds interesting to you, check it out. And last announcement is, maybe you've been kicking the tires on some of our Cloud Posse modules for some time. Maybe like Emil, you're wondering, how do you run these database migrations from Terraform and want those questions answered? No, so head over to our quiz. If you go to cloudposse.com/quiz, this will help you set up a time to talk with me and see how we can help you guys transform your organization with our DevOps Accelerator program. And look forward to talking with you guys soon. So, talking points. I thought this was a really timely question here asked by Johan. Johan, are you on the line today? Maybe not. All right, so we literally had this question come up on one of our customer calls yesterday. And let's see here. I'm gonna pull over my Slack window here somewhere else so I can pull up this conversation. TLDR is, it depends a little bit on how, well, I'm going to introduce it better in a problem statement. 1 second. Yeah. All right. So the question as it was asked was, is updating the security group with a lambda the only way to protect endpoints behind CloudFront from other traffic? All right, I confess I read Cloudflare because that's what we were just dealing with. So the answer I was going to give was related to Cloudflare. The easiest way that we have, at least in our model, for updating those endpoints would have been for Cloudflare via when you deploy the service definition, there's a list of load balancer source ranges. And this would be like the service definition for Ingress Nginx. In this customer's case, they weren't using the Amazon load balancer. And coupling that together with Cloudflare's data source for Terraform, we could get their IPs of the IP ranges and then do this all natively. So when we deploy Ingress Nginx with Terraform, we could also specify the CIDR blocks for Cloudflare. Now, that wasn't the question at all, so I'm gonna skip on that and get back to this. So how do you restrict endpoints specifically to CloudFront and no other traffic? I confess, I don't know what the best solution is here. Matt Calhoun?
What are the endpoints, I guess is the question. Like with
yeah,
S3,
is it API gateway or S3 or yeah.
So S3 for sure, you can lock it down. That's pretty easy. I guess I'm trying to figure out what else the endpoints are behind there, and I would have to look at the specific cases for each one of those to try to figure this out. I know how to do it with S3 pretty easily. I don't know about other non-S3 things.
Yeah.
I actually dealt with this when we were trying to lock down some stuff in AWS's China region, but behind CloudFront, you have to, like, if you only wanted to access AWS resources, for instance, you have to, yes, use a lambda that I think you cook up yourself to access any resources behind the CloudFront, because you're putting the CloudFront is probably speaking to a load balancer behind it, and that load balancer you don't want to open up to the entire internet. Possibly, you have to specify what incoming endpoints it's coming from, and so CloudFront is constantly changing their IP addresses where they send traffic from. And so you kind of have to, I believe there's like an SNS topic that tells you when one of those changes. However, that topic is only available, I think, in the Virginia region, which you can't read from AWS China. I wouldn't call it a region, but the tier, the AWS tier. But yeah, I don't even think I ever solved this problem. But it is kind of a nightmare to keep up with the CloudFront IP addresses. And then at the same time, I think security groups, or at least the time I was working on this, have a limit of 50 rules that you could put on, or 50 IP addresses. So,
so I think IP, yeah, so I think IP protection is probably a futile attempt in this case, and therefore using the conventional like pre-shared key in a header and validating that header on the requests with AWS WAF, for example, might be the most practical way of doing it.
Right, yeah. I never thought about that approach, but yes, better than the options we have right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the method that I use, is to have a pre-shared key from CloudFront to the resource behind it and check it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty amazing that there's no native way yet in AWS to serve like assets in a VPC directly to CloudFront through some endpoint. All right.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to being able to use ACM in our environment, because we have hundreds of certificates and you can't put that many behind a load balancer.
Yeah. All right, next question we have is any insights on provisioning CDNs that are optimized to minimize HTTP2 response delays? Let me open that question up because there's a plethora of CDNs out there. Let's see, where was open link to this browser. Nigel, are you on the call today?
Hello?
Yeah.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for the call. Thanks, everyone. Just to provide some background, essentially, we have a CDN which is serving up media images specifically using HTTP2, but we're not really getting the benefits of, when you take away the TCP, the 6 connection limits that was on HTTP1, we're still seeing some behavior that looks like that. And, we're just trying to get around and see what really the problem is. The links I posted from the Chromium bug tracker were because we came across some chatter, if you like, that was suggesting that Chrome might be doing something specifically, that's causing the issue we're seeing. But we're not certain of that, if you like. This is for a mobile app, by the way.
Okay,
So,
and what is the main behavior you're getting that you want to eliminate?
well, the main behavior is that, like, when we try to load images, like let's just say if we have like 5 images that we're trying to load, very often there's a there's a multi-second delay before the image are like downloaded and rendered.
And these are very large images then, multi-second?
No, that's the thing. No, they're quite small. Like, they've been processed, or very often it's like 90% of the size reduced, like maybe tens of kilobytes.
Sounds like there's probably something else at play that's causing issues. Now, there are obviously best practices such as increasing the number of host names so you can multi-thread across multiple hosts. I don't know, and that's related to like
domain sharding, you mean?
What was that?
I think the way I said domain sharding. That's what I've heard.
Yeah, domain sharding, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not sure if that's still the most effective way to do it. And also, what is your origin for your images? Is it S3 or some other service?
Yes, it's S3. So the CDN is using CloudFront.
Okay, so it's CloudFront in front of S3, and then you'll see sometimes multi-second delays. And your DNS, who hosts your DNS? Are you sure? Have you eliminated DNS as a factor?
Sorry, I'm not sure what you mean. Like, just
DNS
what would I be
resolution
looking for in that case?
Oh, DNS resolution
okay.
time. Yeah. That would be one consideration.
I just haven't thought to look there. I guess I'll have to check.
For CloudFront itself, it's basically trying to understand time to first byte and where the delays are in that process.
Would it make a difference? Because often we see like a stalling period in Chrome, which in Chrome DevTools, I mean in the network tab, and it's almost like the requests, there's this period when the request doesn't really go out. I don't know if I'll say it doesn't go out, but Chrome says it's stalled, and then that contributes to the delay as well.
Yeah. Anyone have any ideas? What should he look for?
Well, I think one of the things you could certainly do if you have, do you see this if you said this is a mobile app, right? That this is happening with?
Right.
Yeah. So
Yes.
have you actually run this in like an emulator on the desktop and simulated like low bandwidth conditions and that kind of thing to see if that's when you're hitting it, or is it completely reproducible all the time, or is it, what would you look at there? And then I was going to say, if you're running it on a desktop, you could run something like TCP dump, or use Wireshark or one of those things to actually like sniff the traffic and see like, is this a delay in the browser stack, or in whatever it is, or is it actually like a delay on the wire? And then one of the other things that I would also ask is it consistently the same CloudFront region that's having the problem with it? Because I've seen some wacky things every once in a while that certain CloudFront edge locations sometimes have issues, and then like invalidating the cache and repushing all the images actually fixes that. So like one example, in New Jersey, I was consistently getting like delays of some content we pushed out there. But if I made a VPN connection and then you like browsed from like Las Vegas, I wasn't getting those delays. So narrow it down to see if maybe it's a specific region. And then if that's the case, maybe you can invalidate the cache and just see if that actually fixes your problem. Maybe there's something wacky going on there.
And have you validated the cache headers too?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the other one.
I've tried. So I was going to say, I have tried setting like longer cache times, but the thing is that whenever, like that helps to some extent, but it's just when it does have to go out to the network, it's almost like it's a longer delay than you'd expect. I think that's the best way to say it. So the caching does help. We do have caching set up, but in those instances when the cache isn't available, the delay is just, it's not acceptable really. And also to the points that you made earlier, in validating the cache, I'll have to check. As far as we've tested both on a slow connection and on a fast connection, and the delay is there.
And what about geographies? Like same geography all the time, or like if you hop around different geographies, does it fix? Yeah.
So it happens with like we have the edge locations for the lambda. It's a lambda that's that's responding to the request, and we have edge locations both in North America and in Europe. And we see the problem in across both of those places.
So here's another idea. If it's lambda, turn on X-ray in that lambda and actually look at the X-ray traces and see like where the delay is occurring. Because X-ray is Amazon's tracing service. So for every request that comes in, it will actually like trace through all the backend calls that are being made by that lambda to other Amazon services, and it will show you where the delays occur in like a heat map type format. So you'll see the request come in at 0 milliseconds, and then it will show you like a timeline of everything until it responds back to that. So that might actually give you a clue as to where you're having some problems there.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that. Thanks for all the ideas.
No problem. And is this lambda at edge by any chance?
Yes. It is.
So the other thing is that I've seen this happen sometimes where
Excuse me.
Lambda at Edge has some crazy requirement that it's like less than 1 second or something that you have to return a response in. And if you don't, it basically just dies. And then the browser or the mobile app might see that as a retry and be like trying again and again. So the X-ray will also show you if you're getting timeouts there too. So that's another real good possibility to take a look at.
Okay.
I think it's not even. I mean, I think it's like tens of milliseconds or something.
I forget exactly what it is,
Yeah,
but
it's very aggressive. What that
I think they
timeout
bumped
is.
it a little bit.
It depends, I think, on the event hook you have. Some of them for the incoming request and the response is not the same timeout because you have 4 places you can hook up.
Yeah, so Lambda at Edge now is 5 seconds is the max time.
Oh wow! So they have increased it. Okay.
Yeah.
Can I chime in really quickly?
Yeah, go
Sure.
for it.
We work together actually, and I just wanted to mention that when we had this on HTTP 1.1, we never saw this. And then once we moved to HTTP 2, we did see it. We're on, what is it, Route 53 DNS. And it is only the first time you get the assets or the images or media. Afterwards, it's been cached and then it's instant. So it's just that first time.
And you've tried the DNS sharding already?
No, we haven't. Actually, that was like our last resort, but we just felt like it wasn't like the root cause of the problem. Felt like mitigating it rather than fixing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you could consistently produce it with like a single client, it's probably not that, it's probably not being overloaded there. There's probably something else going on. I would bet that X-ray is going to give you some sort of insight into where you're seeing the long pole at that point, and then that might help you point to what the root cause is, and then maybe you can figure it out from there.
Okay. Thanks a lot for the ideas.
And for S3, you're using standard storage class, not infrequent access or any of the other cost optimizations.
No, it's the nothing fancy about the S3.
Yeah.
I think because it did work all the time instantly on HTTP 1.1, and then when we moved, I was thinking or wondering if it had something to do with the web server or something with this domain sharding. But yeah, I mean, that is, as soon as you fetch the image and you wait sometimes up to 5 to 10 seconds that first time, and then you can get the very same asset 1 second later, and it's boom, it's instantaneous. And we do have that stall that we see in the web view sometimes at the request phase before it goes out, but that's pretty small, maybe 100 milliseconds or something. Still probably shouldn't be there, but this is such a significant delay since switching to HTTP2 that, seems like it's something possibly connected to that.
Yeah. I think it'd be interesting if you, do everything Matt said, I think is the first consideration. Yeah. And then 2 is try and prove, can you prove that it is HTTP2? Then like maybe could you set up a temporary Cloudflare setup just to see if there's a behavioral difference if you request assets that way, and then you can kind of begin to eliminate options there by something like that.
Yeah, the other thing that I would definitely say in there is that if you use Wireshark on a device and you since you have access to the TLS certificate, you should be able to decode it as well. You'll actually see like all the HTTP protocol level stuff that's being transmitted back and forth, and you can actually see if there's delays or retries or any of that kind of like craziness in there as well. So the 2 things I would definitely say is for the one that's going to be the least complicated and the easiest is turn on X-ray and see if anything glaring shows up there. And then second, if not, capture it with capture the some traces with Wireshark and actually look at the HTTP protocol like exchanges, and you'll see if it's retrying or what the delays might be, et cetera. And then maybe we could, if you are stuck and you have those traces, then and you can provide them, then I might be able to even help you like really quickly point to this might be the problem here.
Oh, okay.
You guys are awesome.
Thanks a lot for that. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks,
And
guys.
let us know what it was once you figure it out. Always good to
Yeah, I know.
add to the library.
Yeah, we'll
So-
look back.
Mhm.
So, Vlad, you shared an interesting announcement here. I see announcing the AWS CloudTrail Lake. So a managed like SIEM, I guess, for CloudTrail kind of.
Yeah, this seems to be S3 plus, what's it, Athena plus Glue plus something. It's nice. It's the kind of managed service that I wouldn't have expected to come from AWS. But this was just announced. I didn't know about it in advance, so I don't know. But it was
Yeah.
interesting.
This is really cool. I wonder if there'll be Terraform support for it. If that's expectable. I wonder if is it under Lake Formation, the existing service, or under the hood?
Doesn't seem like it would be, because it's the lake formation is basically to ingest like data from S3 and then create like a data lake from that. So this seems like it's a new service. So
Okay,
yeah.
very cool. All right, let's see. Any other questions?
Have any of you guys been working with any of the new VPC IPAM?
No, not me, but anyone else?
Because
Anything you
I've
want
currently
to bring up on
Yeah,
that?
currently I've got a fork of the Cloud Posse VPC module, and I'm trying to modify it to include the option to be able to use the IPAM pool ID and net mask length to grab and define the subnets via an IPAM pool assignment, so that across the network can ensure that there's no overlapping IP space.
That sounds really
And
interesting.
The issue that I'm running into right now seems to be more with the AWS provider, but it could also potentially be something set up in my organization that I'm doing my proof of concept work in, because I'm not getting the right pool IDs for the region that I'm trying to execute in. So I'm using the data AWS VPC IPAM pool to try and get the current pool available pools in that region.
Yeah, no, but I think this is something interesting for us to look into, as it addresses one of our considerations when we advise customers is managing IP space. So don't know about it.
Well, I'll definitely be sending the pull request back to the module
right.
upstream and when I get it working. The other issue
Tag Nuru on that, N-U-R-U,
Yep,
at N-U-R-U. Yeah. Okay.
I've recognized his name on a lot of the stuff. The other thing that I'm trying to work into it is also the IPv6 support, but I'm not quite sure how to do that with an Amazon assigned CIDR block.
Yeah, that's something that we're probably going to be adding eventually soon too. We have some customers with like IoT devices and want the IPv6 support.
Yeah. The trick that I'm running into right now is in trying to figure out how to properly pass through the subnet, because you get a /48 assignment that they get, or a 56, I think, that they give you. And then you have to break it down, and you basically give it the pretty much an integer that defines what the subnet, and it appends that to the network mask and comes up with your CIDR block for that subnet. So I'm not quite sure if that would work with the dynamic subnets module as well.
Yeah. Well, definitely work with Jeremy, aka Nuru. He's kind of our SME on that. And
Are you kidding me? His name's Jeremy as well.
yes. Go figure. That's funny.
Small world.
Yeah.
He's not in his 40s, is he? Because that was a popular name back then.
I think he is. So yeah, I have quite a lot of Jeremys in my network. Let's see here if there's any other questions here. Let's see. Lap shield. Oh, Jim Connor dropped. So sorry, Jim, we didn't get to your question today. All right. Any other questions? I'm all out of questions. Oh, I see. Yuri's asking something here. Let me pull that.
Yeah,
over.
I was gonna say, I think there's a question in the Zoom chat.
Do you have any suggestions to
Also
prevent
container
creation?
CV.
Oh, well,
Sorry, go ahead, Rick.
yeah, let me read this question and then we'll get to answering. Do you have any suggestions to prevent creation of resources without cost allocation tags? We already have resources created without tags and it's okay. The problem is that this number is increasing day to day. Why do we want to so what? I think we need to understand a little bit more. How are these resources being created? Or go on, Matt.
Oh, I just want to make sure that what the question is saying is that we no longer want to allow people to create resources that don't have cost allocation tags, right? I think I'm just restating it, but I think that's
how I read it.
Yeah. That makes more sense to me. Yeah. How do you
if it's in an
enforce it?
organization, I would say that sounds like a good place to use the tag policies on your organization as an SCP.
Mm-hmm.
That was exactly how I was going to answer the question.
Yeah,
because that is a sprawl problem that a lot of people start out with, especially startup in the cloud, is that you just start up and then you're not doing it, and then as your resources get crazy, trying to know what it is. We're going through a lot of that right now with some of our environment as well, because some of the stuff is tagged, some of it isn't, and it's been haphazard at best.
And if you're looking for a way of doing it with Terraform, check out our AWS Service Control Policies module, which implements this catalog pattern. So basically you can create your own catalog for policies for your organization, of which one could be which tags are mandatory.
I hadn't checked at that module. I will.
Yep. Good question. Was it Vlad? Were you about to ask a question or answer this question?
I just linked to a recently released CVE, high CVE in containerd. Yeah, it's right there in Slack. I just got an email about Bottle Rocket being patched for this. And I was like, what is this?
Oh. All right. And since Kubernetes has moved to containerd, I'm assuming this affects most people on EKS.
Looks like it. The NHS link or whatever it is, the second link in the message, it has friendlier details.
Eek.
It's new. I haven't fully grasped it yet, but I thought it would be an interesting topic.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Which vulnerability is that?
43.8.16.
uncontainerd.
I mean, if we're publishing a vulnerability in 2002, why does it have a 2001 tag?
I guess that's when it's probably disclosed. And this
I know.
is,
I know.
I was
Hey,
confused about that. I was like, did I miss this? What happened?
At least it's not yet another log for J.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been a double whammy.
We had to break freeze just to deal with that because of SLAs.
Can only imagine how many people's holiday that ruined. All right, any other questions? We got about another 10 minutes on the books. Oh, and
I have one.
Jeremy does mention one thing, that adding the SCP will not affect existing resources, and that's correct. SCPs only affect creation of new resources, not existing ones.
But you can run a report that will show you all the non-compliant resources, so you can go by and fix them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, once you've got your policy in place, it'll tell you what's in compliance and what's not.
Yeah, exactly.
Where's all that?
Where do you get that report, Matt?
Sorry.
The way I know how to do it is it's like AWS resource groups tagging API get compliance summary. It's actually like it's a command line, but let me see if I can find the console way of doing it.
I'll look as well.
Yeah, they have the tag policies visual editor, and it looks like you can do it through there and run your reports through there too.
Yeah. Could you just link to that?
Yeah, let me find
Thank you.
the best doc that makes sense. Then I'll link in the channel.
Thank you so much. I had a question, hopefully for the larger group. So right now we've been leveraging ECS for probably 2 years now. And so what would be a reason to move to Kubernetes, whether it be like our own managed one or EKS? Is there like a point in a company's life that it's like, hey, let's move to Kubernetes?
I know from my experience, the biggest thing is the fact that Kubernetes treats the configurations more as a first-class citizen. So a lot of stuff for me gets simplified.
Are you doing ECS on EC2 or ECS on Fargate? Because there is a big difference between the two.
Yeah,
That's
so right
true.
now we're doing ECS on EC2.
Okay. I think the next natural progression would be moving towards Fargate without really changing too much. The difference is our cost, like you're relying on Datadog. Now suddenly you need to deploy the Datadog agent as a sidecar everywhere, which is unfortunate. Here's how I describe it. I feel like ECS is a little bit like Kubernetes on training wheels, but you start on, it's not a bad idea to start on ECS. And if you don't have a problem or you don't know what your problems are, don't go searching for one.
Right.
Just as a justification to move to Kubernetes, because you'll be squashing one and introducing 10 new ones. I think the biggest problem with moving to Kubernetes is the aggressive upgrade requirements, both on all the services that you have deployed to the cluster, in addition to Kubernetes itself, and the constant deprecations of APIs and versions therein. So it is a large undertaking to move to Kubernetes. But I would say the predominant reason you're moving to Kubernetes from ECS would be leveraging the framework-like capabilities of Kubernetes itself. I think of Kubernetes more as Ruby on Rails for cloud, you could say. Like it exposes all these primitives and all the ways you can do and manage operations on an ongoing basis in a standardized way. that if you get that working for Kubernetes on EKS, you can accomplish similar things on GKE or AKE as well, or AKS, whatever it is for Azure.
It's a good analogy.
Yeah, I think that Terraform is a great tool for spinning stuff up, but it's a shitty operator. It's kind of like every time you want to make a change, it's like going in there with a sledgehammer and destroying it and then bringing it back up, while Kubernetes operators can provide a more graceful way of actually managing the day-to operations or lifecycle of those resources. The analog would be if you really want to do anything more serious lifecycle management stuff on ECS, you're basically, and you're your Terraform shop, you're basically entering into the territory of writing your own Terraform provider to manage the underlying resources themselves. What I don't like,
pretty much what we've done.
Yeah. Oh, you
written a whole
even
bunch
have a
of
provider
Terraform to manage ECS.
Oh, interesting. Well, Terraform to manage ECS, but have you gone to the level of writing your own provider to manage ECS?
No.
Okay, not yet. Yeah. Because that's kind of like the next step is like once you've maxed out what you can do with Terraform and the Terraform hacks, you're gonna reach this next level. Like, how do we even do this? So what I don't like about ECS is there's almost no line between ECS as a platform and infrastructure, if that's a fair assessment. Where I would love to deploy ECS as just a standalone service and then have a separate way of deploying applications on top of it, much the way we have with Kubernetes and manifests and Helm charts. So once it's stood up, we can have a very efficient way to deploy apps on top of it. But in the end, what you get is you're writing these modules to deploy applications on ECS, and then that module gets pretty heavy. And just to deploy one service on ECS, you're deploying 100 AWS resources between IAM roles and target groups and all these other things, and it's pretty heavy-handed, right? So when you come from it from a Kubernetes perspective, it feels very tedious. Some of the things that you get for free if you're going on Kubernetes, going back to like what we were talking about Cert-manager earlier, is you can, when you deploy a service, you could have added just an annotation, and then as a result of that annotation, it automatically registers some DNS for your service when it's deployed, or you can add an annotation and automatically get a TLS certificate added. And there's all this automation that you can get with Kubernetes, and there's all these vendor extensions, you could say. Anybody could write an operator to do God knows what on this platform.
But if you really want things like security group or pods and what's it, IAM roles per service account, you end up deploying a bunch of resources for
Kubernetes. And you can't escape
it's
this
not
problem
easy.
anyways.
People aren't doing that, and ECS is better from that point of view because it encourages, dude, do one, excuse my language, do one IAM role per task. Well, actually two, one task creation role and one task execution role, which are a big deal. We're not doing that in Kubernetes. In Kubernetes, that role is, well, no, there are those roles, but they're still a pain to set up. What?
Where was your post?
It's on my blog, which is being written. I posted the link in the chat.
Oh, you did. Okay.
Vladionescu.me.
So, Michael, have you seen Vlad's post on this from earlier or late last year?
I have not, but I saw it fly by in the chat a few times, so I'm definitely going to take a look at it.
Yeah, exactly. I think this lays it down pretty good. And this, look at the second image with annotations to better understand it. It's kind of a flow chart to understand kind of when to consider what technology for deploying your containers on AWS, because there's quite a few options these days, and they're not all a right fit for everyone.
Right. All right. I think you kind of answered my question of like, hey, when's a good time? And you're like, yeah, if you don't have a problem to solve and you're just looking, maybe now is not the best time. But yeah, I'm always. I feel like everybody in our industry just talks about it, like, oh, Kubernetes this, Kubernetes that, and I just haven't touched it much. So I'm like, what am I missing out on?
Yeah, in another 5 years, Kubernetes is just going to be the next Jeff. So.
Did you buy any NFTs yet either? That's like
no.
buzzwords or buzzwords or buzzwords.
Yeah.
If you don't need it, you don't need it.
To ECS, I don't think you should move. For most companies, moving from ECS to EKS or Kubernetes is not worthwhile. But moving from ECS on EC2 to Fargate to ECS on Fargate makes a lot of sense for a lot of companies. It's not an ideal replacement. It doesn't have image caching and it's slow from that point of view. It's limited in memory and CPU. You don't get GPU support. You do get Windows. And
it costs a lot more.
Fargate Spot is cheap. Like it really is cheap if you can use it.
Well, yeah, but if you have like legitimate 24/7 like running containers, it's significantly more expensive to run that on Fargate than it is on EC2 instances.
In my view, that's worth it because you don't have to maintain EC2 instances. But it depends on how much cost.
We can certainly that's certainly a point to debate. That it is more expensive is just a fact. I was just putting out there. Yeah, whether it's worth it or not is definitely up for debate. I tend to agree with you that it probably makes more sense, but it's not always easy to justify. So
right. So when you say more expensive, like obviously Fargate is more expensive if you're running 24/7, but if you're running on EC2, you need engineers to manage those EC2 instances, which cost money.
True.
Right? Is that what you're?
Although, yeah,
or is that
I
the point
agree.
you were making?
I mean, no, I think you're right. Although most companies, I'm just saying, if you went to your management and pitched like, I want to move from running them on EC2 instances to running them on Fargate, you have to build a case around that, and cost is one of those components. That was purely what I was saying. Now, I wasn't making judgment on whether or not you should do that or you shouldn't do that. I was just pointing out that one of the considerations is cost. Clearly, if you're doing a total cost of ownership of one versus the other, you should include engineering time in that, but rarely is that done and taken into account, when looking at these kinds of decisions. So, but I agree, it would make sense.
So that brings us to the end of the hour. Just on talk of ECS versus classic versus Fargate. I did post a link from Office Hours. Now this is over a year ago, so I'm not sure how topically relevant it is, but it might be worth checking out if you do need to make the case that Matt was saying in terms of costs. So check out our YouTube channel if you haven't already, youtube.com/cloudposse for all our back episodes of Office Hours. If you haven't yet subscribed to our weekly Office Hours calendar invite, you can head over to cloudposse.com/office hours and get an invitation to our weekly session. We do syndicate all of our Office Hours to podcast.cloudposse.com. And if you ever want to work with Cloud Posse, head over to cloudposse.com/quiz today and set up a session with me, and I'll show you what we can do for your company. Have a great rest of your week and talk to you next week. Same place, same time.